How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to be installing this Thinkware U1000 dashcam into my BMW G26 chassis i4. Now, even though the i4 is an EV, because it's the same G26 chassis as the 430i and 440i gas vehicles, and even the diesel ones for you guys in Europe, the installation process should be the same if you have those as well. And even if you have a 3 Series, all of the modules and the way the panels go together are pretty much the same, so you can use this guide as well. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be using this Thinkware U1000 dual channel dash cam in the car. So dual channel means it's a front camera and a rear camera. And I like this camera because it's a solid quality camera with a really good feature set. So in addition to good image quality, this thing also is well known for being pretty miserly on power in parking mode, and the parking mode itself is quality. As we can see, other things included with it are the hardwire kit, a cigarette or 12-volt lighter kit. You've got the various mounting pads, the rear camera cable, a small 32 gigabyte backup card. Well, at least I use them as backups. They include a CPL filter now, which is nice, and the documentation. Now, one area where Thinkware could improve is on the hardwire kit length. Now, if you're using this with a dedicated battery system like this Cellink Neo, which I also got at blackboxmycar.com, these do not really fit very well anywhere up front. So if you're using one of these, you'll probably have to put it close to the rear fuse box in the trunk area, and in which case you'll need to extend the wires on this hardwire kit. But as you can see there's exposed leads, so you can solder an extra length of wire to however much you want. If you're not going to be using a battery system though, then the front fuse box is close enough where the stock length of this is perfectly fine and you don't have to do anything special. And speaking of the dedicated battery pack, here is the Cellink Neo that I also bought from blackboxmycar.com for this, and the package that it came with. So we've got your typical documentation. We have our output cable, and as you can see, this one's got quite a bit of length to it, and it's also got the exposed leads. So I can just solder this to the hardwire kit that came with the camera, and they'll probably be long enough to reach the rear trunk compartment of this i4. Also on the output side, you could choose to output to the 12-volt socket if you wanted to do it that way, but I don't think that would give you parking mode because, well, we don't have 3 different wires, you just have 2 coming out of there, right? A power and a ground. We have our little add-a-fuse kit so we can tie into the fuse box, and to do that I will also be using this input cable that it came with. So it's got the exposed lead there to put into the add-a-fuse, as well as the ring lug for the ground. But you can also power this from a 12-volt socket as well. So if it's easier for you to do it that way and you've got one in the trunk area, then you can plug this guy in here just the same as powering it from a fuse box. One thing Cellink does recommend though is if you are going to use this 12-volt to power or charge the Cellink, set the back setting in the rear here. Set that charging speed to low instead of high. Only use high if you're going to be hardwiring directly to your fuse box, and that fuse that you're putting it on has enough current capacity for it, which can be up to a 9 amp draw. Alright, so we're going to start with installing the front camera, and to do that, I don't want to hardwire up the fuse box and all that before I know everything works, so I like to grab the 12-volt adapter, plug that into your cigarette lighter socket, and use that to power the camera so we can get this positioned. And once we've got that, then we can work on the wiring to the fuse box and so forth. Now, before I power on this camera, I do want to insert the memory card, and I'm using a Samsung Endurance Pro, which is meant for extended video recording. So you always want to make sure you have a micro SD card that is suitable for the bit rate of the camera itself. And since this one is 4K, it requires a little bit better read-write speeds, particularly write speeds, than some of the more casual SD cards might offer. Now, the Thinkware U1000 is a Wi-Fi enabled camera, and we can see that the Wi-Fi light is blinking right here, meaning we can connect to it. If it wasn't, then I would just press this Wi-Fi button right here in order to enable it. So now I have to go on my phone and connect to the camera. So now I'm seeing the Thinkware Wi-Fi network from the camera. I'm going to enter the password. If I remember correctly, it should just be 1 through 9. We'll take a look there and connect. right, now we're connected, so let's go back to the app. And you can hear in the background that the camera itself says when it's connected. So now we can go look at the settings and whatnot, but what we really want is the live view. Because now we can see on our phone what the camera sees, and we can figure out where to place it accordingly. Now, one of the things I like to use when mounting a dash cam are these static cling sheets where you peel off the backer and then stick it onto the windshield. And the reason why these are becoming more and more popular is because, you know, the normal mount for the camera has this double-sided 3M VHB tape, and that always just leaves a ton of residue behind. It's kind of difficult to clean up. So when you use one of these, you can stick this directly to there, and if you need to reposition the camera or remove it, you just pull the cling sheet off, and you have no mess left on your windshield. But before I go and position that, what I want to do is I want to take the camera, kind of put it where I think I'm generally going to want it, and then look on my phone screen to see, oh yeah, is that a good position, or do I really need to move this somewhere else on the windshield? So I'm going to go ahead and do that and figure out where I want it, and then we'll go ahead and mount it for good. So for the i4, the two areas that I'm thinking about placing this camera are down here on the passenger side or up here also on the passenger side. And the reason why is you can see this U1000 is kind of a long camera. So putting it right here, it kind of hangs down a little bit low below the bottom of the mirror here, so the driver can see this out of the corner of their eye. Typically we like to put this on the opposite side of the driver so that it's kind of hidden behind the mirror and it doesn't really obstruct vision. This has a better picture, more even in my opinion, because this mirror base up here is so wide. Putting it up here is obviously out of the way, but then the picture on the camera is obviously skewed more towards the passenger side. Now, normally you wouldn't put a camera where the dot matrix is because you're not going to get it to stick very well. But on this car, the dot matrix is actually not on the outermost layer of glass, so it is still smooth here. So I can put that static cling sheet there and put the camera here if I wanted. But I think I'm going to try down here to start. And if I don't like that later, well, we have that static cling sheet. That's for a reason. So it's easy to reposition if I want later. So I'm going to place the static cling sheet on. Make sure there's no bubbles trapped in here. Now we can place our camera. One of the things I'm going to look at is how these slots are oriented. So you can see that the plate goes on it and then it would slide, you know, the plate would slide that way up. And so over here, that means I can't lock this in its position and then just stick it as close as I want, because then the center of this or the housing for the mirror is going to prevent me from ever taking this off without pulling the mount off. So I'm going to put this in the unlocked position, stick it on there, and then slide the camera over into the locked position on its mount. All right, we've got our camera in place, and now we can work on the actual wiring that we're going to be doing. So in order to access this area on the A-pillar, we're going to remove this weather stripping, and so you can just kind of grab it and pull down on it until it comes out of the door, and we'll loosen that up going all the way down the door frame towards the bottom, and that will allow us to expose, by peeling this back, the side curtain airbag here, because what we're going to do is we're going to take our wires and route it up and over this. See, I can reach over the top of it and then feed those wires in towards the camera. Now usually you have to pop off this A-pillar cover a bit, but with as much flex as it has here, I don't think I actually need to do that in order to route the wires in and over. If you want to remove this cap, you'll need something really sharp and thin like a pick. Just get underneath it, really underneath it, and pry it up and pull it out. Then we'll see a Torx bolt right behind there. This is a T20, and you can just simply unscrew this, and that will let you pull this A-pillar trim inwards a little bit more to have some more working room. So I'll start with my rear camera cable, peel this back, put this up on top of that airbag, feed it in. And pull that out the other side. And next I'll do the same with the power cable. And now I will pull both till I have about enough to reach the camera. Now I can hook up both to the camera. I'll start with the rear camera cable, and I'll take the power cable and get that in there too. Now we can start routing the wires. You can see on this mirror cover here, it's actually two pieces. There's an outer cover, you can pull it out a bit, and then the bottom. And so what we can do is we can route these wires underneath this cover, just pry it back and tuck that in there like so, and then we'll do the same for the other one. And we're going to do that and follow that up here till we get to the headliner, and then we can just tuck it in behind the headliner here, going all the way towards the door. We can just reach in with our fingers. You can see I can just feed it into that headliner area. There's a nice little gap there. It's perfect for these wires. And then once we're at the A-pillar, we can just tuck this in more, or we can grab it from the other side, right? We can pull that through till we can get this all nice and tucked in there. You may use a tool like a pick in order to help yourself run this wire into the liner a bit better. There we go. Next, we can begin to remove these lower sill panels, and for this main one on top, we'll want to disengage the clip at the little corners at the end. You hear a little pop when it comes where it comes in contact with the two sills next to it. And then it's really just a matter of pulling up on this in order to get it out. Now you'll notice we have these little white clips remaining in here, or at least 3 out of the 4. And these are what secure that sill piece to the body. We'll need to go in with a pry tool, get under the flange of them, and then pop them off so that we can reinstall them later. And if we look at that sill piece, you can see these slots that they go into. This one came out with the sill piece, so the others we'll just take and just slide it onto the little track. Okay, now we are underneath the passenger footwell, and we are going to have to remove this panel here. So as you can see, there's this little twist lock on this side, and you have another one recessed over here. So what you'll do is you'll just go ahead and turn that to the left, or counterclockwise. They are pretty stiff, so you probably want a pair of pliers to do so. But once you do that, you can see it just drops loose like that, disengaging the panel. So I'm going to do the other side now. And then as you can see, we can drop this panel down and pull it out. Note that there's this light down here, so we'll need to take the connector off of that. It's kind of stiff right now because this is the first time I've taken it off of this guy. So I guess I'll take my pliers once again. There we go. Well, except for that, there's this cable that's on this little support ridge thing, so we have to release the little clip that holds it on there. I just use a little pick to shimmy it between the teeth and this plastic support right here that it bites onto. But now I can take the panel out. Next, we'll look at the side kick panel for the passenger side, and we'll just take this and we'll pull it towards the back of the car. Oh, there's one more pop in here. There we go. And with this side kick panel gone now, we have exposed, right up here, the front fuse box. So if you are installing a dash cam and you are not using a dedicated battery system, this is the fuse box you're going to want to tie into, because obviously it's right here and a lot easier to access than running wire all the way back to the back of the car. Now, BMW used to make it easy to find out which fuse was what because they included a little paper card that had a fuse map on it. But now, in order to save cost, or I guess the trendy thing to say would be environmentally conscious by printing less paper, they have you go to this website now, which is fusecard.bmw.com, and when you go there, it'll ask you, put in your VIN. So once you do that, then it'll have you download what your actual fuse card looks like. So now the question is, which of these fuses should you use for your dash cam hardwire? Well, all of these big fuses here, these are all constant on, and everything further down from them, even these bigger ones down here over on the side, these are all on with the ignition. So if you're using parking mode and not using a dedicated battery, you can use any of these up here, and then for your battery power, your constant on, and then for your accessory on, any of these other ones over here. And if you're wondering which side is the hot side or the powered side, whether it be this inboard leg or this outboard leg, it's the leg that's towards this label or towards the center of the car. So if we have our fuse tap, we would want to insert it like so, and not necessarily the other way around like this, right? So fuse tap goes in like that. So the pigtail coming off of the fuse tap should go towards the outside of the car here. So now let's route our wires down towards that area, and I'm just going to move them along this ridge here and pop the weather seal back into place behind them as I move all the way down. So when we get to the bottom of the car, you'll notice that BMW has this nice fat wire harness assembly that goes from the front and follows the body all the way towards the rear. So what we will do is we will take our wires and we'll route them right along this harness towards the back of the car. And I know earlier I said I thought with the Cellink hardwire I would have enough extra cable to route that wire all the way to the back, but it turns out it would have been close. So what I did is I added another 1.2 meters of wire in between the camera hardwire and the Cellink hardwire to make sure that I would have enough to reach the rear. So yeah, if you order from a place, Black Box My Card is a perfect example, and you tell them you have a BMW with a rear mounted fuse panel that you want to go to, they will make an extended wire harness for you so that you don't have to make one yourself like I did. So as we follow the sill towards the rear and we remove more of that weather stripping, we can actually see right here this little white clip, and that is the clip that holds this piece into the body. So you know, you can just grab right here and yank and pull it out, pop it out, or there's probably enough gap here. You can use your trim tool to get in there and pry that clip and this part out on the front side. And then you'll want to take the seat and move it all the way towards the front so that you can do the same in the rear door. Okay, looking into the back seat, the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to loosen this bench, so we can just grab right here and pull up. That's all we need to do to loosen it. Then we'll want to remove this sill piece again. So just like the front side, I'm sure it's clipped into the adjacent panel down here. Yep, there's one. And then we should be able to just give it a good yank to get it to come out just like the front. And just like the front, we've got these clips that sit in this track. On this piece, most of the clips came out with the sill, but there's one left. So once again, I'll get a pry tool and get this guy out and put it back in the track on here. Now we can pull back the weather stripping along the door again to expose this clip that holds this part in, and then we'll just push on this part inwards towards the center of the car. Now for this next part, we need to remove this side bolster, and to do that we'll need to fold down the seat back, and then we'll reach around back here because the receptacle which holds it is kind of right behind where my hand is here. You'll give that a really hard tug. You may need to try and use both hands, but once you have it loose, then you'll take it from the outside here, rotate it towards the inside of the car, and that top will come out, and then this pulls straight out. So next we're looking at the cargo pass-through area. This is now officially the trunk. Right here where my hand is, this is where the seat back would be in the upright position. We have this cargo hook. We need to take off the cover here, so you can take a pry tool, kind of get on the top, pop it till it's loose, and then the top's actually the hinge. Oh, because I gotta pop it a little bit more on the bottom. There we go. And that will flip up, revealing this Torx screw. So I will take a T40 and remove this. Next we can remove this panel, so we'll release it from the bottom and then it comes out. And interestingly, this here, these 4 bolts, I'm pretty sure this is what secures the top of the air spring assembly for the i4, right? The regular gas models, they just have your conventional top mount and they don't have an air spring. And now that we've pulled back this weather stripping, again, we can see the clip that holds this sill piece into the body. So we'll just pull on it towards the center of the car really hard to dislodge this and free the bottom of this sill piece. Now you can see we've got this lower sill piece loose and have a nice wide gap in there so we can feed our wiring from the front along through the rear. So we'll just pull all of this through. And once we have all of that wire pulled through, you can pull back the carpeting and tuck that underneath so that it perfectly follows this nice fat wire harness again. Next we'll continue feeding the wires underneath this carpeting along that big main harness. So it comes out on this side of it. So now we'll continue to run our wires along the main BMW harness. I'm gonna slide this underneath here and put this on the other side of this white conduit piece. Okay, so here is where these 2 cables that we've been running to the back are going to diverge, because I'm going to route the rear camera cable up this door sill and I'm going to route the power cable back towards the trunk area. And so we will pull our weather stripping out a bit and take that cable and run it in that gap all the way up to the top. We get to this seam and then we'll pull it over. And if you're wondering, well, doesn't this get in the way of a side curtain airbag back here? It doesn't, because the airbag actually pops out right around here in front. So this is well behind the metal support that redirects that airbag. So this is going to be totally fine, and we'll just stuff this cable in this seam going towards the back of the car. At the back of the car, continue to stuff that cable into this groove until you can get all the way back to the hatch area. All right, let's work on the rear. So we'll start by removing this shelf. Just pop it up in the front, it pivots out, easy peasy. We'll need to take our floor out. Then next we'll remove this shelf up here just to give ourselves some more room. So we'll take this, we'll turn it, which allows that to pivot out. And this actually gives me enough room, but if we want, we can also just take it out. So you'll see a flat edge on each of the sides there. So you want to get that flat edge lined up and then pull out. Next, we're going to remove this center trim piece. So I'm just going to use a trim pry tool, unlatch it from the part next to it. And I'm going to see if I can just pull this straight out. There we go. Then do the same with this side. Get your trim tool to unlatch it from the piece next to it and try and grab it and pull out. Next, we're going to remove this right side trim, but before we can just pop it out, there is actually a little T25 screw there right where that privacy shelf went, so go ahead and undo that first. Now we can undo the clip over at the front, and then we can pull the rest out and we'll pull them inwards. So the clips go into these holes on the side pointing out. Now we can work on removing this grommet from the right side. And what I'll do is I'll just take a trim tool and crush it in, pry it out. Then we're going to work the lower part of that grommet. This might be a little bit easier just to reach in here on top and kind of push down and pull out with your fingers, since the more narrow side is over here, which doesn't collapse as well even when poking it with a trim tool. Now that we have both ends of this pass-through tube loose, we now have to get the wire, the rear camera wire, up into it so we can feed it to the hatch. So we'll start by pulling off this weather stripping up at the top. That'll let us see this nice gap over here in the headliner. And then in the headliner right here, there's a plate with a plastic clip. So we'll put our fingers on top of that plate and pull down, so we can pull that headliner down and have more room to work the wire up. So now I'm going to work feeding this wire through the headliner up here and try and grab it and pull it through. Should probably turn my hand this way. There it is. Now comes the difficult part of trying to snake this wire through this conduit so I can get to the hatch. There's part of this conduit over here is attached to the wire harness, so I can't really pull it down and make it straight to feed like a clothes hanger through. So I'm going to see if I can pass this cable through here. So as you can see, guys, I was actually able to feed this all the way through just using my fingers and pinching and kind of scooting it along. It actually wasn't that bad. So now what I want to do is I want to feed enough wire through here such that I can route it up through here and have enough to get where I want to on my rear camera. Looks like I'm going to need just a little bit more, but I don't want to have a bunch of excess wire in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take any excess wire and I'm just going to bundle it up and leave it in that gap between the headliner and roof. So this looks like just the right amount of wire I have now, because I'm going to bend this and put it down here so it's behind the cover. It's slightly taut over here. Maybe I'll use a cable clip to keep this nice and tidy, but otherwise looks pretty good here. So what I will do is I'm going to mount the rear camera, take off this, and place it over here where it's nice and centered. I think one cable clip kind of right over here is good, just to keep this nice and secure and not rattling around. Then I can put the side piece back on. Don't forget the little T25 screw. This just needs to be hand tight screw. Now we can put that center trim back. And once again, we just take all these and line them up with the holes and then pop into place. Make sure to push those edges to get the corners. Now that everything on the hatch is back into place, let's go ahead and reseat the grommets. Now take the excess rear camera cable, bundle it up, and then I'm just going to tuck it in here in the headliner out of the way. And then we can also take this plate with that clip, pop that back into place, and then tuck the headliner underneath the weather stripping. Now we can move on to power. As you can see, I've got the power cable there, kind of draped how I sort of want to route it. But eventually I want to end up into this nice big cubby area right here, and that's where I'm going to put the Cellink. If you have a gas, 430i, 440i, you've got a battery there, but on either side of the battery, you should still have space for your Cellink. So I'm going to route it behind the side panel there, underneath, come up, and then go into the cubby, kind of right at the corner where the cable's laying right now. So I'm going to route it from the cabin side over to this little cubby hole area, pull that through. Next I'll feed it underneath this piece and pull it towards the junction of these various panels. And I've left a little slack here because I want to put this silencer piece of foam over here before I pull it a little taut. And then maybe I'll tuck it along the seam just so it's a little bit cleaner till I enter in right here. Now for the Cellink. Now you can see that fits perfectly right there. And the next thing I have to do is I have to take this power cable and route it from there to our fuse box right over here behind that panel. So that just pops out pretty easily, exposing all of those fuses. Now the hardwire assembly for the Cellink only has two leads, a accessory or ACC, or I guess that's backwards, ACC, and a ground lug, because, well, you only want this charging when the car is on, so there's no need for a constant battery on. So I'm going to route this similarly to the camera power cable, going from this side over into this other side, right where this open port is. And then from there I'm going to push it over behind the liner to the fuse box area. Oh, there we go. Okay, so looking at this fuse panel, which of these fuses are we going to use? Well, all of these guys over here, these are constant on, and all of these guys here, these are accessory on, or, you know, only when you turn on the ignition. And in particular, these green ones, these are all related to seat heating. So that looks like a pretty decent one to go ahead and tap into. So I think that is where I'm going to put my fuse tap. Now, when I also looked and saw what's the hot leg, whether it's this top side or the bottom side, it is the top side. So that means for our fuse tap, we will want to place it like so, right, or the pigtail coming out of the bottom. So I think I'm just going to use this first fuse here. I think this is number 265. You know, on the bottom, I'll put this 30 amp fuse here in the bottom slot of my fuse tap, and then the top one, I'll put a 10 or 15 amp one, because the Cellink can charge up to 9 amps. Now, one strange thing I'm finding is it doesn't seem like there's a good place to put the ground lug anywhere around here. There's like no metal screws, and you know, when I was probing this with my multimeter, I was actually using these bolts down here that I think secure the air spring as my ground. So where do I want to put that ground? Well, maybe I'll put it close to where the Cellink is, because as it turns out, over on the back here, behind these little covers, you just put a pick in there, pop this out. There's a nice metallic screw going to metallic frame, and since this is where the Cellink's going to be anyways, I can just pop that wire up through here and fasten it right there. So maybe I will separate these two by just, you know, pulling them apart and then running this back into that cubby area. Now let's pull all our wire back through, especially that ground lug that I'm going to mount somewhere else. So I've used my T45 and I've loosened this bolt enough to take it out, and actually this is a pretty sizable bolt, so I did modify the ring lug a little bit so it would fit, because, well, there just aren't any other good options around, believe it or not. Kind of weird. So anyways, now I'm going to take this wire, I am going to snake it up from the bottom into that spot. Used a pick so that I can get this, and once it's there, then I will take that bolt and secure it. Then secure this to the 19 Newton meter torque spec. Don't forget to put the cover back on. Okay, so what do we do with this lead? Well, we're going to put that into our fuse tap, and you can see it just goes right in the center there. And once that's in, then we need to crimp this to secure the connection. I like to use a pair of vice grips. This really does a good job of crushing that tube. Now we've got a nice good crimp on there. The wires will not pull apart. I've gone ahead and pulled that 30 amp fuse from that seat heater socket, putting that in the bottom, and then I will install the fuse tap into that position. And there we go. Don't forget to close up your fuse compartment. I can replace this cover now too. Don't forget to put this cargo tie-down point back as well, and we'll use that T45 once again. And the torque spec for this is going to be 19 Newton meters. Now it's just a matter of hooking everything up to the Cellink. So I've got my output power going to the camera, and then the input power to this guy. And we'll switch this to high position since we're hardwired. Now let's put the rear sill back together, and once again we'll start by doing this B-pillar. We can see the clip there. Just got to get it aligned, pop it into place, and we can get our door edge guard, the weather stripping in place, get that nice and solidly on its seam. Then we want to get this lower sill trim on there, or the top one, and this will slide underneath the bench. Don't forget to make sure you've got all of your clips in place. So lift up the bench, slide this underneath. Make sure to get all those clips aligned where they need to be. And then once they are, give it a nice whack into place. Make sure these two pieces lock into each other at the bottom. Then we can re-secure the bench just by pushing down in the center here. And we will reseat all of our weather stripping up here as well. For the side bolsters, we want to make sure we take out this white clip, and the way we do that from here is it's got this tongue that you kind of press down, and that'll let you pull it out. And after we take it out, we can reinstall it on the bolster in this rectangular receptacle. So this is how it goes. You can see this little curved part matches with the curved detent or indentation on the receptacle. Plug that in. Once it's all together, we'll pull the belt out of the way, slide this in. Here we go. Get it into place and then hit it back into place. All right, let's close up the front. So looking at the rear of the front sill, we can see right that clip, and you should be able to see the hole that it plugs into right there. So we'll just put it there and pop it into place. Next, we can put the passenger kick panel back into place. If you look at it, you can see it's got these 3 clips. Sometimes these might stay lodged into the receptacle in the body. So if they do, just make sure to check there to see if you need to pop them out and then reinstall them on this piece. But as you can see, these 3, they just plug right into the wall there. So I'm going to line these up. And just get them in place. Next, we'll reinstall this bottom panel underneath the glove compartment. Over here on the inboard side, you can see there's this little hook here, and that's going to attach behind this part of the flap on the transmission tunnel piece. And then let's not forget about this light connector, as well as this part that goes on that stud. It just bites into it, you just press down. And we'll slide this back into place till everything lines up. And as you can see right here, there's an arm that goes into a little hook on the top of this panel. There's also another one right here. So make sure you get those on those arms or those catches. Then we can secure the 2 thumb screws. So we'll get it there, try and twist it. Once again, it's a little bit difficult, so I'm going to use my pliers to help me there. There's 1. And here is 2. Next, we can replace all of the sill weather stripping along the door. It's easier to start it in the corners and then make it work its way into the flat areas. Now we can replace the top sill. Remember to put all of the clips back in their tracks. And we just need to line those up and pop them into place. And then remember the seams, make sure they snap into the piece next to it. Then don't forget to put your T20 screw back into the A-pillar trim if you removed it, and then tighten that down. And this just needs to be hand tight, just lightly snug. And then go ahead and replace the cap with the airbag label. We can put back the privacy shelf. And then don't forget your inbound privacy cover. And then we can put the floor into place.